Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Damodara Janani, Lord Damodara's mother by Sivarama Swami. We are going to be beginning chapter 9, Krishna remembers Kuvera sons. First of all, let me wish everyone a very happy Diwali, and also not only Lord Ram came to Ayodhya, today also the Damodar Leela took place on Diwali day in Gokul, and this is what we have been reading from. And today we'll hear the other part of the Leela which happened on the same day. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatam ham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Krishna remembers Kuvera's son. Krishna stu griha krityeshu vegraya yam matri prabhu adrakshid arjunau purvam guhyakau dhanadathmajav. While Mother Yashoda was very busy with household affairs, the Supreme Lord Krishna observed twin trees known as Yamala Arjun, which in a former millennium had been the demigod sons of Kuvera. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 9, verse 22. Entering her apartment, Yashoda Devi spoke to her entourage of friends. Look at this mess, my rascal son's morning antics. The village ladies scanned the devastation with wide-eyed amazement. How could a little boy cause such chaos? He really is a rascal. Very much so. I cannot believe this, but he is the sweetest rascal in Gokul, and also the most mysterious. And whatever else he may be, he is a rascal, said Yashoda, trying to hide her pride. Wiping her hands in her skirts, she added, not only I must clean up after him, but I must also catch up on the many duties that were delayed because of his nonsense. O Queen, we will clean up the spilled yogurt while you and your maidservants attend to your chores. Looking around the rooms while thinking of the many ways to serve her son, Yashoda sighed with pleasure. They are endless. There is no end to this housework. Mother Yashoda was the very form of loving service, and as such, whatever housework she did was for her son. Thus, her activities of cooking, washing, and churning butter were a perfection that was beyond the reach of Vaikuntha's residents. And her absorption in such chores far surpassed the samadhi of the most accomplished yogi. Yashoda Devi's every waking moment was an absorption in a spontaneous loving service to the unlimited Supreme Lord, who had ever her eternal thundering praise for great demigods and perfected devotees. Because of the eminence of service to him, Mother Yashoda had left Krishna, whom she loved more than life, to serve him. O Queen, said one of the women, do you think it was wise to leave Damodar alone tied to that mortar? Yashoda cast a glance in the direction of the courtyard. He is not alone, but in the company of his friends. They are looking after him. Another gopi added, and he is in the courtyard nearby, both within eyesight and earshot. Besides, Yashoda Devi smiled, he is tied to the mortar. I cannot imagine that he could untie himself or move the mortar. A friend agreed, impossible. I think he is safe where he is, but some others were not so certain. Are you sure? You just spent all morning trying to tie him down. What makes you think that he is so easily restrained? Yashoda Devi remained unperturbed. Cast your fears far away. We can hear any disturbance he makes. Additionally, his friends will let us know if he misbehaves again. But if he thinks he can free himself, then let him try, let him try. And outside in the courtyard, Krishna was trying. His mother's final words to him were still ringing in his ears, riling his ire. My dear boy, your whimsical conduct has now come to an end. If you think you are so clever, then free yourself of this rope. Go ahead, pull the mortar behind you and go wherever you like. Damodar fumed, and to the delight of his friends, he was pulling the mortar, but where would he go? Aware that his mother could easily hear the Gopas' cheers, Krishna placed a forefinger to his lips to calm them. To contemplate how he could give vent to his anger, Krishna abruptly sat down on the ground while his friends amused themselves nearby. Nandatila sloped gently off to the Yamuna, whose shimmering waters worshipped Krishna with soft beams of radiance. The caress of autumn breezes was a massage that stroked his tired limbs. The bouquet of blossoming flowers, remedial herbs for his aching feet, and the chirping of birds, wise counsel for his ruffled mind. In these moments, during which Krishna took pleasure in the beauty of Vrindavan, his anger abated, but when he felt the rope around his belly, his mind again became perturbed. Mother said that I should free myself if I could, but I cannot. She has bound me with the knots of love. How can I possibly undo them? Such an act would be contrary to everything I stand for. I can never free myself from the love of my devotees. As Krishna was thinking in this way, his pastime potency covered him, and he again thought of getting free. Frustrated that he could not, he punched the ground with the fist. Anger welled up in his mind, and divine ignorance spread through his being, blackening his already dark complexion. With reddened eyes, Krishna scoured the surroundings until the two stately Arjuna trees again caught his gaze. They stood proudly by the gate of Nanda Maharaj's estate. Recognizing the trees as two celestials who had been cursed by Narad Muni, Krishna admired their majestic foliage, lush with leaves, flowers and fruits. Although the trees had been standing for many years, they had been recently named Arjuna trees after Krishna's Gopa friend Arjun, and because they appeared like twins, Yamala, two trunks sharing the same roots, the Vrajavasis called them Yamala Arjuns. Krishna had never been close to them, but he had often gazed at them from the palace. Some Vrajavasis called the tree Gopa Sakhas because they were friends to the cowherd community, offering their bounty without asking anything in return. Standing side by side, these trees looked like munificent kings who distributed charity freely, all like heavily laden clouds that made no distinction where to shower their life-giving waters. Despite their grandeur, the trees were shackled in place by their roots. I'm just like those trees, thought Damodara, bound. Now I know how conditioned souls feel, constrained as they are by the ropes of material nature. Perhaps if I perform the good deed of freeing those trees, I, in turn, shall be freed from this mortar. Continuing to think in this way, Krishna simultaneously exhibited two contradictory natures. He was an angry boy who had been unjustly punished, and the omniscient Lord who was planning how to liberate the trees. The demigods overhead were wonderstruck at this extraordinary conduct, having recognized earlier that they were privileged to witness a very special pastime. They knew better than to question what they are seeing. With folded hands, they praised Krishna, Prabhu, Prabhu. Yes, although tied to mortar and angry with his mother, Krishna was still Prabhu, the master of all energies, of all beings, of all circumstances. Yet aside from his mind-boggling deeds, he continued to appear like a 3-year-old. While continuing to eye the two Arjun trees swaying in the wind, Krishna hatched a plan by which to further expand his pastimes and please his devotees. By tying me up with her love, Mother has put me in her debt. I must repay her. Perhaps liberating those two trees will be a start. In this way, Krishna revealed a further truth about himself. While he is bound by the love of his devotees, he continues to give liberation to others. Krishna is the exclusive son of Mother Yashoda, and for her, he is a naughty little boy. As far as others are concerned, he is the Supreme Lord, possessed of unlimited powers and might. Now, while acting as Damodar, Krishna was invoking his godly powers to liberate the demigods trapped in the Arjuna trees. These demigods were formerly the twins of the treasurer of the heavens, Kuvera. Their names were Nal Kuvera and Manigriv, now embodied as Arjuna trees. They had become purified by many years of suffering, but more so by contacting the earth of Gokula and the people of Vraja. And when from their vantage point they saw Krishna crawling in their courtyard, their desire for pure devotion arose. Krishna remembered these demigods' past lives, the events that had led to their meeting Narad, and the curse that brought to them as Rajatris. In appearance, he looked like one of his boyfriends, but as all-cognizant Lord, he recalled every detail of Nalkuvar and Manigrive's history. The sons of Kuvera, these young men, naturally lived a carefree life of opulence and sense enjoyment. Unlike their father, who dutifully managed the wealth of both demigods and men, Nalakuver and Manigrive squandered their time loitering in the Chaitra Ratha garden. Intoxicated, they plundered the wealth of that garden, whose trees sprouted jewel leaves and bore beautiful maidens as their fruit. Decorating themselves with the jewels and enjoying these young girls, Nalkuver and Manigrive spent their time in drunken stupor with not a single care for others. When Kuvera once performed austerities to please Lord Shiva, he and his family were rewarded with the status of demigod. Unfortunately, the accompanying prestige not only increased his sons' opulence but also their arrogance. Thus, Manigrive and Nalkuver were always doubly intoxicated by Varuni drink and by false pride. They thought, we are the sons of King Kuvera and the favorites of Lord Shiva, who dares to oppose us? In this way, Manigrive and Nalkuver exhibited the disposition of demigod worshippers who were bewildered by the trappings of the worship. Moreover, the brothers subsequently neglected all proper conduct, what to speak of the service to Supreme Lord. Having gained access to Lord Shiva's Mount Kailash, the twins, who were always eager for enhanced sense pleasure, sought out the celestial gardens decorating the banks of the Mandakini Ganges. Now privileged demigods, they abandoned their previous girlfriends and sought out the more attractive apsaras of heavens, with whom they wandered through those flower gardens in an intoxicated state. Sometimes they drank a liquor from Varuna's abode and sometimes a beverage from the churning of the milk ocean. Whatever they consumed, the resultant conduct was always self-indulgent narcissism. On one such occasion, Manigrive and Nalkuver were enjoying with the Apsara admirers within the lotus-crowded waters of the Ganges. The lotuses were of every color and description, and their aroma attracted swarms of bees and birds whose combined songs mixed with the laughter and merriment of the twins and their women. Due to arrogance and the demigods had abused the privilege granted them by Lord Shiva and committed the offense of using a sacred place for sense gratification, being in an intoxicated state, bathing naked and indulging in sex are all offenses to Ganga Devi. And as drunks often do, the two men sang songs of pleasure and goaded their consorts to do the same. Thus the usually sacred atmosphere of Mount Kailash was spoiled by the ribald sounds and licentious acts. Krishna thought, generally people go to the Ganges to be purified of the effects of sinful life, but these two foolish men were sinning in the divine waters of the Ganges. Thus the purification they derived from such bathing was minimal and incidental. There being no other way for their deliverance, all-knowing Narad Muni, who always desires the ultimate welfare of all living beings, decided to go there. Narad thought, since even pious acts like bathing in the Ganges will not purify these fools, let me give them the irrepressible seed of devotional service. Without notice, Narad suddenly appeared where the Devas were reveling. Although he was an effulgent and as a second son in their drunken stupor, Nalkuver and Manigrive did not notice him. Narad was dressed in deer skin, and the radiance of his fair complexion was surpassed only by his golden matted locks. He rested with his veena on his shoulder, and although walking, his feet never touched the ground. Famous as the foremost devotee and the greatest scholar of devotion, Narad was also versed in other branches of the Vedas as well as in their practical application. He was a professor of the Puranas, history, logic and morality. In short, he possessed full knowledge of the truths of creation and that which existed eternally beyond. He was eloquent, resolute, intelligent and blessed with a powerful memory. And while he was always absorbed in singing the glories of the Lord, he also had interest in military science. Thus, in addition to being learned in every branch of devotional music, Narad was also versed in the six sciences of treaty, war, military campaigns, restraining the army, and the strategies for the ambush and retreat. But this time Narad Muni was not thinking of martial arts. He was absorbed in thoughts of Krishna's childhood pastimes. Overcome by ecstasy, he was singing songs in praise of the compassion that Krishna shows even to demons who attempt to harm him. And the ecstasy that Narad felt was submerged him in Krishna's compassion that tears of joy flowed down his cheeks as he sang, Tokena Jivana Haranam Yad Uluki Kayas Tre Masikasya Chapada Shakto Pavrittah Yad Ringatan Tantara Gatena Divi Prishorava Unmulam Tva Itra Thar Junayorna Bhavyam. There is no doubt about Lord Krishna being the Supreme Lord, otherwise how was it possible for him to kill the giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother, to overturn a cart with a leg when he was only 3 months old, to uproot a pair of Arjun trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Recognizing the Kuvera and Manigriva, Narad foresaw that he was destined to participate in the very pastime of which he sang. Krishna's supreme compassion stirred the heart of Narad, who then mercifully thought, how can I deliver these fools and give them a taste of real nectar? The nectar of meeting Krishna. Narad Muni was a first-class devotee, a Bhagavat Uttam. Demigods and demons alike acknowledged that he had crossed to the far shore of the Vedas. Thus, with unfathomable wisdom, Narad decided to bless foolish Nalkuver and Manigriv. These demigods have fallen from the mode of goodness and are no better than the low-class Guyakas. Although the intoxication of wine wears off with time, the intoxication of pride does not. If I simply bless them with the good fortune of pure devotion, they will flaunt it. I must curb their pride, and when that has been achieved, they will then be eligible for bhakti. Therefore, I will curse them. As Krishna recalled Narad's decision to curse Nalkuber and Manigriv, he smiled. Such is the causeless mercy of Vaishnav. He curse counteracts offenses, and subsequent purification enables the curse to see me. Fixed in his determination, Narad came closer to the sporting demigods, lost to wanton abandon, embracing and kissing the girls they were enjoying in the river in the way of bull elephants and their wives, and so remained oblivious to Arjun's presence. But the more sober Apsaras noticed him. The naked girls immediately covered themselves with their long hair, and wading to shore, they hastily dressed while urging their lovers to do the same. O Prabhus, dress quickly, put on your clothes, lest this great sage curse us. Nalkuver and Manigriv were too intoxicated to hear or understand, and even if they had, they were too proud to be goaded by anyone. The girls panicked. Quick, come to shore and dress. But the two men simply taunted the girls, and in their stupor, they began to splash each other, joking, quickly dress, quickly dress. Narad's anger rose, and he thought of the sequence of Krishna's pastimes and resolved that these two would serve the Lord. The sage could envisage the courtyard of Nand Maharaj and these two demigods standing there as trees. By cursing Nalkuver and Manigriv would have been an instrument of the Lord's mission, yet he was hesitant. It will be an offense on our part to curse demigods. And yet I am helpless in the great plan of the Lord. Moreover, if I curse them, they will benefit by getting the direct vision of Lord Krishna. What could be more auspicious than that? Child Krishna was pleased with Narad's humility. Although the sage was acting as his instrument, Narad was concerned not to offend even fallen devotees. The Lord thought, sometimes when a father wants to feed his sleeping son sweet rice, he has to pinch the boy to wake him. Similarly, Narad cursing the demigods would bring them to their senses. That curse, therefore, would be a blessing in disguise, for it would result in the greatest auspiciousness for the curse. From the story of Narad's curse, devotees in the future will recognize the dangers of bad association, which will bewilder even the devas. Devotees will also learn of the inestimable value of the moment's association with the pure devotee. So the devotees will recognize the dangers of bad association, which even bewilders the devas, and also they will learn the value of a moment's association with pure devotees, which is which is not recognized by many. Krishna nodded his head with satisfaction, seeing Krishna's gestures. The cowherd boys raised their eyes, whispering, I wonder what he's thinking, me too, and me. Krishna was contemplating the very picture of compassion. Narad Muni standing above the sons of Kuvera, his brow. Narad thought, if I curse them, they will continue to remain in a state of ignorance. Let me therefore speak some words of truth which will enlighten them and give them food for thought as they live out the duration of the curse. By this time, the effects of irony had begun to wear off, and Nalkuver and Manigri were coming to their senses, aware of their nakedness in the presence of an angry sage, and finally seeing the Apsara's warning being behind Narad, demigods just raised their folded hands to their head, speechless and fearful. They waited to hear Narad's words, too ashamed to say anything to themselves. Narad wanted to point out that the handicap of opulence is that to which Nalkuver and Manigiri were attracted, and which inspires the cardinal sins, lust for buying women and gambling. He said, among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction for riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family and being learned. When one is uneducated and falsely puffed up, when one is uneducated but falsely puffed up by wealth, the result is to engage one's wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. The demigods, Manakriva and Alkuvera, would have been cultivating the moment of goodness and elevating themselves by control of mind, but the allurement of their father's wealth led them to As demigods, Manigriva and Nalkuver would have been cultivating the modes of goodness and elevating themselves by controlling of the mind, but the allurement of their father's wealth led them to the mode of passion and the sinful conduct associated with it. Now they were in ignorance. The root of sin is sentient. To maintain their perishable bodies, Nalkuver and Manigriv, which they think will never grow old, they kill poor animals without mercy, and they sometimes kill animals merely to enjoy an excursion. When bewildered by such debauchery, eating meat and killing animals, fools forget that the Lord is witness to such sins and that he quickly metes out corresponding punishment. Although such rascals fancy themselves ageless and deathless, they themselves become a victim of violence and death, pointing to the men. Narad said, while living, one may be profound of one's body, thinking oneself was a very big man, minister, president, or even demigod. But whatever one may be after death, this body will turn into worms, stool, or ashes. If one kills poor animals to satisfy the temporary needs of the body, one does not know that he will suffer in this next body for such sinful miscreant. Such sinful miscreant must go to hell and suffer the results of his action. Still got, I think, about 4 pages, but I would like to finish this today because this is the narration of another Leela which happened on the Diwali day in Nanda Bhavan in Gokul. Narad chuckled at the irony of it. Although people daily see old age and death, still they think they will never die, but they will, and when they do, they will have to visit the hellish planets and suffer for their foolishness. Meanwhile, the bodies they cherish so much will become the stool of worms or the ashes of fire. Deliverance from such fate is possible only by the guidance of a real guru. Still pointing to the two drunks, Narad asked rhetorical questions to instruct them. While alive, does this body belong to its employer, to the self, to the father, to the mother, or to the mother's father? Does it belong to the person who takes it away by force, to the slave master who purchases it, or to the sons who burn it in the fire? Or, if the body is not burned, does it belong to the dogs that eat it? Among the many possible claimants, who is the rightful one? Not to ascertain this, but instead to maintain the body by sinful activities is not good. Under the circumstances, who but a rascal claims this property as his own, and who but a rascal commits the sin of killing animals to satisfy his whims? Unless one is a rascal, one cannot live in that way. Narad looked intently at Nalkuver and Manigriv. Did they understand that their bodies were not theirs, but their true identity was spiritual, that they were distinct from their bodies? No, had they known, they would not have killed innocent creatures for the pleasures of the hunt and burnt flesh, or remained steeped in ignorance arising from the excesses of wealth. To awaken the brothers from their stupor, Narad then lay bare the future awaiting them. It would be painful future, but an effective remedy for their conceit. Atheistic fools and rascals who are very much proud of wealth fail to see things as they are. Therefore, returning them to poverty is the proper ointment for their eyes, so that they may see the things as they are. At least a poverty-stricken person can realize how painful poverty is, and therefore he will not want others to be in painful condition as his own. Just as there is medication for every disease, there is a solution for every misconduct, and the solution for those blinded by wealth is poverty. This is the principle of Nidana Viparyaya Nyaya. The cure is the opposite of the cause. Evidence for this rectification process can be seen in the general conduct of those who were once poor and who later become affluent. They do all kinds of relief work for the benefit of the less fortunate. By seeing their faces, one whose body has been pricked by pins can understand the pain of others who are pin-pricked, realizing that this pain is the same for everyone. He does not want others to suffer in this way, but one who has never been pricked by pins cannot understand this pain. It is said that those who have experienced pain can appreciate real happiness. Real pleasure. But those who have never experienced pain do not know what it really is. These truths of nature are exemplified by two sayings. The happiness of wealth is enjoyable by a person who has tasted the distress of poverty, and a woman who has not given birth to a child cannot understand the pain of childbirth. Narad went on to extol the benefits of poverty following the principle of Daridre Dosho Guna Rashi Nashi, which means that poverty destroys one's pride in his birth, education and beauty, making a pauper a candidate for liberation. The sage said, a poverty-stricken man must automatically undergo austerities and penances because he does not have the wealth to possess anything. Thus, his false prestige is vanquished, always in need of food. Always in need of food, shelter and clothing, he must be satisfied with what is obtained by the mercy of providence. Undergoing such compulsory austerities is good for him because this purifies him and completely frees him from false ego. While a yogi must undergo hard austerities and sadhana to become free of pride, the pauper automatically becomes prideless. What has to be proud of? For this reason, some say that poverty is the best of austerity. Reflecting on the benefits of poverty, Narad added, always hungry, longing for sufficient food, a poverty-stricken man gradually becomes weaker and weaker, having no extra potency. His senses are automatically pacified. A poverty-stricken man, therefore, is unable to perform harmful, envious activities. In other words, such a man automatically gains the results of the austerities and penances adopted voluntarily by saintly persons. To mitigate the sufferings arising from hunger, the pauper gives up all interest in the taste of food and other sense objects, which in effect results in sense control, and when the senses are under control, he abandons violence against others for the sake of sense gratification. Thus, while pride in wealth leads to loss of sense control and thereafter to violence against others for the sake of sense gratification, thus, while pride in wealth leads to loss of sense control and therefore to violence, poverty leads to control of the senses and cessation of all forms of violence. Narad Muni was a living example of these principles. In his last life, he was the son of a poverty-stricken maidservant, and so he knew what hunger was, but he had been fortunate. He was able to serve and hear from traveling mendicants who would offer him the remnants of their meals. Speaking from experience, he recalled the greatest asset the poor have over the rich. They are receptive to the association of great souls, which make their path to perfection unobstructed. Saintly persons may freely associate with those who are poverty-stricken, but not with those who are rich. A poverty-stricken man, by association with saintly persons, very soon becomes disinterested in material desires, and hence the dirty things within the core of his heart are cleansed away. Inspired to glorify Vaishnavas, Narad added, saintly persons, sadhus, think of Krishna 24 hours a day and they have no other interest. Why should people neglect the association of such exalted spiritual personalities and try to associate with materialists, most of whom are proud and rich non-devotees? At the same time, name-giving ceremony of his son Nand Maharaj, at the name-giving ceremony of his son, Nand Maharaj told the sage Garg, Mahad Vichalanam Nridam Grihanam Dina Chetasam. Saintly persons move from one place to another only for the sake of poor-hearted Krsnas. Despite such blessings, the wealthy are rarely as open to receiving saints as the poor, and so the latter gain an eternal benefit from the former cheats himself of. By Vaishnav association, the poor are quickly freed of lingering material desires and purified, they advance in devotional life. One may ask, will the wealthy ever get devotee association? The answer is that prosperity is not an automatic spiritual disqualification. If wealthy people are devoid of pride and subsequently show respect to Vaishnavas, then they are eligible for mercy. Like the poor, devotees have no possessions. So when they go to the home of a rich man, it is not to receive money but to give mercy. However, if rich men are proud and arrogant, impervious to divine grace, devotees will neglect them in favor of those more qualified. Narad thought, all glories to those of proper conduct, peaceful hearts, knowledge of the truth, and love for Lord Krishna. All glory knew that they were about to be cursed, silently lamenting their lot with bloodshot eyes. They pleaded for clemency. Narad wished them well, but his idea of blessing was different from that of the drunks. Narad went to bring Kuvera and Manigriv to pure devotion through poverty, and to that end he would curse them. He was not about to pardon them so that they could continue a life of debauchery and violence. Still dwelling on Krishna's childhood pastimes and the greatness of Vaishnavas, the sage thought, there is no greater gift than the direct association of the Lord. I will give that gift to these rascals, although they are not eager for it. Narad remembered how Parikshit Maharaj appreciated hearing about the Lord. What then to speak of seeing him? The king had said, Yena Vatarena Bhagwan Harir Ishwaraha Karoti Karana Ramayani Mano Gyani Cha Nah Prabhu. In Vrindavan, until then and after witnessing Krishna's pastime as an infant, the Lord would personally deliver them from the curse. Tathastu, so be it. Before the Apsara's unbelieving eyes, Nal Kuvera and Manigriv disappeared from Kailash and appeared in faraway Gokul as twin saplings. As extra mercy, they became Arjun trees, sharing the same name as Krishna's friends, one of Krishna's friends. Thinking we are followers of Arjun Gopa, their pure devotion began. Narad turned towards the Apsaras who were cowering together in fear. Are we next? No, Narad simply gave them the warning glance. Although they had also behaved indecently when they had shown shame and remorse, the sage would let their fate unfold. Having seen and heard Narad, the seed of devotion was planted in their hearts, and eventually they would excel as Vaishnavis amongst celestials. His mission in Kailash completed, Narad departed for Vaikuntha. There he would beg the Lord to forgive him for cursing the servants of Lord Shiva and request the Lord to make his curse come true. But then, feeling ashamed of what he had done, he decided against meeting the Lord directly and changing course. Narad went to Badrikashram instead. There he would disclose his heart and mind to his Guru, Narayan Rishi. Such is the conduct of a pure Vaishnav. Although acting as an instrument of the Lord, still he feels guilty for cursing someone who more than deserves it. Sitting a little apart from his friends and absorbed in remembering Narad's adventure, Krishna nodded his head in acknowledgement of the sage's words and deeds. Out loud he said, Tathastu, so be it. The Gopas nearby looked at each other. So be it. So be what? I do not know. So, actually, this pastime is going to carry on tomorrow on the Govardhan Leela day. In chapter 10, Krishna fells the Archan trees. So, we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for joining. Wish you all again a very happy Diwali. And the day the Damodara Leela manifested and the 2 Archan trees were set free by Lord from the curse of Narad Muni. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.